Chapter. Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Jim. And it's been an honor to serve this college, this community, and this task force to try and advise them on branding matters and make sure that they have the professional information they need to make wise decisions. I'll share just a little bit of some of the things that they considered in developing a recommendation list of new names for the college. First, it's always important to remember that a name is not a brand. It's not even a logo or a tagline. A brand is something that it reflects the aspirations and the successes of an institution. And in the case of Lord Fairfax Community College, that brand has existed for 50 years as a beacon to the local community, bringing success to individuals, bringing prosperity to the community, helping with workforce issues, healthcare issues, and the advancement of our fellow citizens of this area. It has built stories layered upon layered over decades that are success stories, many of which the task force brought into the conversations that that informed their deliberation. And we can't expect a new word, a new name, even the very best possible name, to just as quickly catch up on 50 years of storytelling. We also don't expect the community to fall in love with the fact that the name has to change, even though the decision has been made. It's okay to love a brand, especially one that has done so much good, and it's okay to mourn when when it's time to change the brand. We're involved in hundreds of rebrandings, and it's always a little bit challenging. The new name, whatever name is ultimately selected, will take a while to take hold. Again, Lord Fairfax has a 50-year head start on whatever name we put on the table. But once we connect that brand to advertising, social media, logos, slogans, and other things, it will begin to take hold and find a place in the hearts of the community, just as the old one did. So we looked with the task force at how community colleges in Virginia are named. And interestingly, one of the largest recurring themes is that they're named after geographic parts of the Commonwealth that they're related to: the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Eastern Shore, Mountain Empire, New River, Piedmont, Tidewater. They're anchored in place. Interestingly, out of the many, many recommendations for names that came from the community, and we opened up the website for anyone to comment, almost all of those names related to the mountains, the valleys, the vistas, the flora and the fauna of the region. And so the task force, I think, wisely listened to the community and followed that path. I'll also point out, if you look at this list of names, that none of them, if you just saw the word by itself, Tidewater, none of them would knock you off your socks the first time you saw it. It may seem a little bit empty when you just look at them and type on a list. But when you know about the institution, when you see t-shirts and signs and logos and you see the success of students, all of these names are storied in their own way. All of them are beloved, all of them are powerful, and every one of them is successful. The naming finalists, in addition to the criteria that the task force established, which Jim talked about, we had technical criteria. This is a brand after all. It has to be trademarked, it has to be protected, and it has to be able to be used and said and spoken. So we looked at different trademark classifications, different language markets. We always look at how does a name sound in other languages like Spanish and make sure that we haven't created a problem for ourselves. We do US trademark searches in related categories, common law searches, to make sure that there isn't any direct conflict with an institution in our state, especially another community college. And we look at different name types to create the best type of name for the institution. We also wanted to avoid abbreviations that were the identical abbreviations to other community colleges within Virginia. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all unique. Some community colleges in Virginia actually have similar abbreviations, but we wanted to avoid that. And finally, we bore in mind that the first time we see names, we generally have a negative reaction. So the task force had to go beyond their first impressions. Names aren't really built on first impressions, they're built to last. It's just like if you have a child, a niece born into your family and she has an unusual name, you might say, well, why would they pick that name? I promise you, after you meet her, you hold her in your arms, you get to know her personality, you will not only love that niece, you're gonna love her name, because the name is now attached to something that's meaningful. But before that, it can be difficult. It makes our business tough because first impressions aren't always great. I would encourage you, as you have time to think about these names over the next few days, to reflect on them again and again. The task force did exactly that. They took their time with them and they saw that different things rose to the top once they got comfortable with them. In fact, in a survey of people's reactions to names, their initial reaction, 49%, was negative to a new name, and 51% was neutral, which means first reaction to names, there was 0% of people that typically like that new name. And I think we see that even around us. When the Redskins changed their name, people were angry and upset. When they named the team, the Washington football team, they were even angrier. How could you name it something as lame as the Washington football team? But now this year, just a little while after they changed their name, they're talking about changing it to a permanent new name. And people are furious that they would consider letting go of Washington football team, a name that they hated just a short while ago. So the task force had to look beyond the initial reactions to imagine what those names could do for the school over the long haul and how they connected to the community. And that led to the development of the list that I'm about to share with you. So our first name developed by the task force is Valley and Vista. It's a terrific name that really is anchored in the community, and it relates to every part of the community, which is something the task force liked a great deal. They also liked the ampersand construction of the name, which gives it a little bit of creative energy. It could look especially good on a logo and become an iconic thing that can be taken advantage of. They liked it so much that, as you'll see, there's another name they selected with the same construction. What we heard about the name from one stakeholder was, when I think about this name, I think about how we're all coming from a different place. This isn't a linear journey. Sometimes when we first interact with the college, we're at the top of the mountain, and sometimes we're at the lowest of the low. It doesn't matter where you are, you're here. There is a place for you. Our trajectories are not linear. They're not flat. It's all over a place, and that's a good thing. That's where our strength comes from. And so we always take these names and we try and picture how they might look on stuff, because part of a brand is visual. So here's how it could potentially look on the website. Of course, this is not intended to be a logo or even a slogan that we will use. It's just to capture the feeling, this notion of never stopping climbing and going from that valley to the vista. Another wonderful thing about a vista is it's a broad point of view. And as a professor, I appreciate that the primary goal of higher education is to broaden people's horizons and point of view. It looks great on items, on a diploma. It looks terrific with the mascot and in signage. So that's Valley and Vista. Our second name is Red Oak. And of course, there's the prominence of oak in the area. I don't have to suggest any particular reason why that would be significant here. But it's also something that is known for strength. It's been cited in literature for as long as there is literature. There's reference to it in all oaks and red oaks and all kinds of literature, usually associated with symbolism for strength, growth, development, as we know that oaks start as acorns and grow beyond that. One college stakeholder said red oaks grow in all of the service regions LFCC tends to. This name does a great job of honoring the distinct beauty of the area. In the fall, they turn a gorgeous flaming red. I also love the image of the tree. I think it has a lot of strength and growth behind it. I couldn't have said it better. Again, it's simple, clean, very short, only 6 characters, easy to say, easy to spell. Looks great on the website. It kind of speaks to a strong start, and great on all other applications. The next name selected by the task force is Laurel Ridge. And I'll say this, we had a lot of recommendations that came in from the community relating to the laurel. And a lot of discussion, as Jim can attest, in the task force about how much people loved laurels, how they grow everywhere. But what's interesting about the laurel is it has a dual meaning. The mountain laurel is a flower that is known for its tenacity. It can grow in the most difficult places, under shade, among rocks, in grottos, and yet it spreads. It is beautiful, it smells wonderful, and it's particularly prominent in the region served by Lord Fairfax. And of course, a ridge is a term that is used again throughout literature. It's referred to in the Bible as is laurel. It speaks to achieving higher planes. And when you put them together, they're really impressive. One other surprising thing about laurel that we all know is laurel is a term that is used in education and achievement. There's a Nobel Prize winner is known as a laureate because laurels are accolades for great achievement, especially in an academic environment. By the way, the laurel was a favorite of Thomas Jefferson. He wrote often about it. It's anchored to this part of the college's territory and this part of the country. What we heard about it from stakeholders was, when I think about a laurel, I think about the old age saying, don't rest on your laurels. The idea is that laurel is an accomplishment, an academic accomplishment. And once you reach that accomplishment, you don't rest on that accomplishment. And another said, what I like about this name is the idea that you have these laurels that you've gained and you're standing on a ridge. And the question is, what are you going to do? You take these accomplishments and you go do something wonderful with them. Love that. And it's certainly the story of so many people who have graduated from Lord Fairfax Community College. Again, it looks great. It's easy to say, easy to pronounce, looks great. It's unique. It speaks to climbing higher and achieving. And whether large or small, we can already picture it in application. Now, the next name, another one with ampersand, as I mentioned, was coming, is Valley Ridge Community College. It's very similar to the other, the low and the high of it. It has a great look and construction. It unites the community in a powerful way. And we heard that. I really like the sound of Valley Ridge. I think it answers an awful lot of questions about the valley portions of our campuses and the fakir portion. This name really speaks to the unifying multi-campus locations that we have under LFCC. It also, again, speaks to that notion that the ridge is often looked at as both a plane that you achieve as you climb and as a resting point where you can gain a wide point of view and perspective. Native Americans climbed on ridges to get a view of the surroundings, the animals, potential threats, and ridges have often been described in literature as high points where we can see further and gain an advantage. That's what college is all about, is seeing further and gaining an advantage. Valley and Ridge Community College, it looks great. 2 quick words. It again speaks to climbing and escalating. And we can almost picture it on things like diplomas, t-shirts, walls, and signage. And the last recommendation that came from the task force out of the many, many, many recommendations that they reviewed is Newbridge. A simple, clean term shown here as one word, although it could be used in both ways. We think it actually works best as a single word. This speaks to, of course, new starts. In the task force discussions, when they talked about the impact on students, and students spoke about the impact on them and their families and those around them, they often talked about the new start that the education from Lord Fairfax gave them, that they had new perspectives on the world. And a bridge is often used as a symbol in poetry and literature for connecting us to a future point, for bridging different parts in our life, but also it's relevant here for bridging different parts of a community that is served with 8 different geographic locations. So it's also that bridge between education and commerce. For some, it's the bridge between childhood and adulthood. So our task force saw a lot of different and really impressive things in this name. One of them said, the name really speaks to my own experience at Lord Fairfax Community College. In a lot of respects, I needed to bridge my own self, and the school represented a new start for me. Once again, it's a simple, clean structure. It looks good with a slogan like "Connect to Your Future." And on materials like diplomas, signs, and so on. When we look at them all together and you review the criteria, can this unite the whole service region? Yes. There were some names, for example, like Laurel, which are great names and certainly respected in the area, but only speak to a particular part of the region, whereas these are broader. Does it honor the distinct beauty and culture of the service area? Yes, again. Does it celebrate the unique background, experiences, and aspirations of the members of the community? I think the symbolism really does a great job at that. Can it grow to inspire students, communicate timeless relevance of a quality educational institution, and reflect the college's positive spirit and can-do values? I think that they can. And finally, does it draw inspiration from the mission, vision, and values? It's not the name of one individual. It's not a name that speaks to one individual's accomplishment. The school isn't about that. The school is about a community's accomplishment together and the future of the community together. So just before we get to questions, I'd love to share what some of our next steps are. We've concluded 3 more roundtable discussions with stakeholders from across the college community to discuss the naming options and gain additional feedback, and those were very positive. All community feedback will be presented back to the task force, including anything that comes out of this session and anything you'd like to share online. If your question doesn't get answered in this session, please feel free to go to the college website under the naming tab and ask a question online. All of that feedback will be presented to the task force for their final session on May 12th, and then they'll narrow down the top 5 names to top 3 names that will be presented to the president and the board.